get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Hello, loyal BYWG podcast tribe. For the last 2 years, Dr. Mike, Dr. Wanda Lee, and myself carefully every month curated and selected a product of the month and the book of the month that we felt would have tremendous benefit to your physical, chemical, and emotional wellness, and we will continue to do this. However, as we enter into the new year, the year 2019, we have one of the most exciting announcements to share with you all since the inception of our lifestyle-driven company. For January 2019, we are keeping the product of the month in-house. Behind the scenes, we have been diligently working on the BYWG nutritional supplement line, and we are proud to announce that they are now available. All of our BYWG nutrition supplements and formulas are custom designed by your doctors and created specifically so that we know exactly what's in your supplements. No unnecessary fillers, no cheap substitutions, no gluten, no dairy, no wheat, no soy, no corn. Only what you expect with high quality and value. All of our formulations are hand blended in small batches, less than 100 bottles, so we can control the quality and quantity of each capsule most effectively. So the question I ask you is, do you know what's in your current supplements? We know what's in ours, and now you do too. If you go to our website, www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com, click the tab that says Nutritional Supplements. On this page, you'll find the full information sheets for each of the products, a library of published scientific references on these amazing ingredients, and most importantly, a customized supplement questionnaire to help us guide you in your choices. Once you complete this, you can decide to purchase, and you will receive a 10% discount code for your first purchase. So let me give you a little glimpse into our first 8 unique supplements. Number 1, Stress Rebalancer. This is a unique blend of the adaptogen ashwagandha, amino acid 5-hydroxytryptophan, antioxidant glutathione with several other additions as a one-stop shop for managing the physical impacts of stress. Number 2, Bone Health Plus. This supplement is so much more than just calcium. Number 3, Digestive Boost. Do you have a difficult time digesting gluten and dairy? This formulation includes the DPP4 enzyme specifically designed to combat the occasional or not so occasional gluten and dairy exposure. Number 4, Joint Formula Plus. This is a powerful blend of building blocks associated with joint and cartilage repair. Number 5, Probiotic Power. 25 billion CFUs per serving, including 9 lactobacillus and bifidobacter strains, including the probiotic powerhouse L. reuteri. Number 6, A Burst of Sunshine. This is our version of the ever-important vitamin D3. Number 7, Turmeric Boost is the BCM 95 version, which has been proven to be 7 to 9 times more bioavailable than the standard 95% curcumin extract. And finally, number 8, Magnesium Glycinate. Magnesium is one of the most common nutrient deficiencies, so this unique form of magnesium is bound to glycine to make it body-friendly, highly absorbable, with no concern for bowel upset. We highly suggest you go take our quiz at the website. We know you will be impressed. Getting the most out of your healthcare dollars are extremely important to us. Our supplements represent the best of the supplement world. Enjoy the upcoming podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast for this week. I am Dr. Wanda Lee McPhee, and I'm hosting this episode with my guest, Jeff Chant. Jeff is a prosperity architect, a business consultant, coach, academic, and minister. His purpose is to close the gap between profit and people, so organizations awaken to a reality that you can bring your humanity to work and be a thriving organization. And today we're going to talk about that more on an individual level and how pressure can impact our identity and maybe keep us off purpose. as we're going towards the end of a year and the beginning of a new year, this is a great time to talk about some of these key topics. So welcome, Jeff. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me on your podcast. It's my pleasure.
So I know that intro was very brief and doesn't really touch on all of what you do and who you are, but in order to give people a little chance to get to know you so that they can understand your messages and why they are and where they've come from, let's start by finding out a little bit more about you. How did you find your purpose?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's always a process of continual sort of discovery or integration as well. But I'll try to keep the story fairly brief. You know, I grew up sort of always sort of part of my local church, very active and in that community, and at the same time was also very entrepreneurial, even as a young kid, and was really set on going into to business for a career. And came to a point at the end of high school, like most kids, trying to figure out what you're supposed to do with your life, and have always been pretty intentional that, you know, that there is a purpose for us. And so I went into ministry in the United Church of Canada and followed that path. And part of that process, Wanda, was me really saying no to business. It really felt like an either or choice for me at that point. Do I go into business or do I follow this call I felt to kind of serve people? And so I went that path, and I think I needed to make the distinction at that time. But then what happened is I was in professional ministry. I was always sort of trying to bring, let's call it, best business practices to the organization, not only the church, but not-for-profits I served on boards as well. How do we get sustainable revenue? What's our vision? What's the product, which again, a lot of not-for-profits don't like to talk about, but what differentiates us in the market? And felt a bit of a frustration that I couldn't bring this part in, and so kept trying to do that, and did do that, I think, with some success. And then I came to a point where, you know, I wanted to sort of go out on my own and really try this entrepreneurial endeavor and see if there was a way to bring some of the more humane sort of approaches to work and people and organizations to the marketplace. And so I started an organizational consulting practice. And so I stepped out of the sort of the church and not-for-profit world very much into the corporate world, where I grew an organizational consulting firm and then joined an international oil company as an executive VP, and was really then trying to bring sort of culture and accountability and, I guess, humanity to work in a very corporate business-focused setting. And all that to say that for a long time I was denying sort of one aspect or one dimension, I think, of who I am. And coming to a point in a realization that you can't do that. You have to bring your whole self. And for me, it's I see myself, I guess, as an individual that cares deeply about people and humanity and what's right and purpose-oriented, and that you can have successful, profitable businesses at the same time, that they're not necessarily or that they're not in opposition of each other. And so now I integrate that work in organizations and coach individuals around sort of blending the two.
And your company, I'll have all the details, of course, in our show notes, but your company is called Magnanimous. So yeah. That's an interesting name for a company. Why did you choose that name?
Well, you know, it's a word that I've always kind of loved and had tossing around in my head. There's different meanings for it. The literal meaning for magnanimous from the Latin, magna means big or great. And animus is one of those words that often gets defined as mind, soul, spirit, intellect. And so for me, it's about organizations and individuals having great mind or great intellect and great soul or great care. And so, you know, you can blend both of those. And I think when we think of sort of people in our lives that we consider just great people or wonderful human beings, normally they're people that are not only caring and compassionate, listen to us, empathetic, but often they're also people that are very driven. They're very clear. They're honest and direct with us with feedback. They generally care about us, of course, but they're individuals that have a lot of intention as well. And I think blending the both of those is sort of, I guess, what I think is important in terms of our own individual leadership and organizations as well.
Well, it's interesting. One of my favorite quotes is, "A belief is a thought we keep thinking," and that seems really to be reflected in some of the things I've read through your work and on your website when you talk about people not being really the source of our pain, but the perspective that we have around that. And maybe we'll start there as we dig into some solutions. Maybe start with the problem. How does this create issues?
Yeah. Okay. So I think fundamentally, one of the symptoms that I see in relationships, and at any level, is blame. And we start to point fingers and blame others for our own condition or how we find ourselves. And what happens is we start to see others in terms of whether or not, or how I should say, they're impacting us, right? We're good at that. We're good at sort of articulating what it's like to live with so-and-so or be in relationship with so-and-so or my manager or leader or whoever it is. And we tend to blame people. And we have this idea that if I could just have different people around me, or I could change or fix people and what I mean by that when I say that, of course, is change them to work for me or in a way that helps me, that my life would be better. So what we've done is we're often seeing people as less than they are. We see people in terms of how they're impacting us, and we don't often ask ourselves, what's it like for others? In other words, how am I impacting others, right? When I'm having a bad day, or I'm not getting what I think I deserve or what I want, how is that impacting my partner? How is that impacting my children? What's it like to work with me at work when I'm highly stressed or I'm disengaged? And that's what I mean by shifting perspective, is moving people from seeing people as problems to seeing them as people like me that have hopes, that have frustrations, that have good days and bad days, that care about family like I care about family, that have work to do like I have work to do. And often what we'll do is we kind of turn them into something less than the fullness of their personhood or their humanity.
Well, and when we talk about health at Beyond Your Wildest Genes, we see that in kind of parallel, not only in blaming others, but people blame their genes or they blame their environment, rather than taking that responsibility for their own choices. And that whole concept of epigenetics, where we can determine how our bodies express certain things. And in your particular case, we can determine how our minds perceive certain things by changing how we look at them.
Yeah, like it's interesting because even if the way I am, part of that is because of my genes, right? It's my DNA. I can either use that DNA to justify me being, making the decisions I'm making or poor decisions, or I can say that's who I am and I can make different choices. So it's how I even use that information, right? I can use it to justify me blaming others or justify me not being able to prosper or what have you, or I can say that's who I am and I can use it to move to a place of thriving or prosperity. So on one hand, I'm using it as an excuse. On the other hand, I can just use it, say that's who I am, accept it, and not give up my agency or my ability to make choice and kind of step forward, right?
Absolutely. So one of the things you talk a lot about is identity. Mm-hmm. And in today's world, there's all kinds of people telling us who we should be or who we're supposed to be or what we should do or what we shouldn't do. There's a lot of pressure. Yeah. How does that pressure impact our identities?
Yeah. So this is sort of basic. I think this comes out of basic neuroscience. So when we're under pressure or stress, a natural reaction that we have, this is just evolutionary, is in our brain, is that we go to a place of survival, right? The reptilian or the lizard brain, governed by the amygdala, right, which is designed to help us survive and keep us alive. That's its purpose. When we're under pressure, that kicks in, and and it's good that we have it, right? If we're under real threat or real danger, we don't want to be moving to a place of logic and creativity, right? The neocortex, which is sort of this uniquely human part of us, we need that instinctual survival brain to kick in and keep us alive, right? The problem is that the brain can't distinguish between an actual threat and a perceived threat. So if somebody pulls a gun on me and I'm under real threat, okay, my survival instinct or that part of my brain kicks in. Just like if I'm in a meeting and I'm put on the spot and I feel under attack, it's the same thing, right? And so what happens is we almost unconsciously, because we're not really conscious of this happening, or we don't pay attention to it, we start to live, behave, and react out of a place of survival, out of a survival mindset. So when we're under pressure, that part kicks in. It's a perceived threat, yes, but that's why you'll hear people at workplaces or in relationships say those types of things, right? She's after me, they're out to get me, I feel attacked, etc. That's very much sort of that survival language. And what happens is under sustained pressure, we behave from that place, okay, and behaviors become habitual. They become part of who we are. So we know, for example, we have friends or people we work with that when we say certain things, it triggers them, or if they don't get their way, maybe they get upset. There's these very typical responses, and what happens is we start to form an identity from those. And now we get a reputation or identity based on behaviors we've formed out of a survival mindset, okay? And when our survival mindset sort of becomes the way we navigate our life or navigate our world, those are the behaviors and the identity that we create from that. So really there's two pieces to it, right, to identity. One is our biology, but the other is our biography, right? So now there's the story I tell myself as a result of this pressure about who I am. And I think often that story we tell ourselves about who we are is distorted from sort of reality, or distorted from a place of, if we could look at it sort of objectively, or outside of sort of this pressure cooker or this pressure context, we'd see something very different. So let me just give you a really quick example. When I talk to leaders and managers, for example, in organizations about their identity, normally what they share with me is very positive about who they are. And that's the story they tell ourselves. But if we were to have a video camera watch them manage people or have very honest conversations with the people they work with, we hear a different story. And so part of our awareness, our journey to understand who we are, is we need to understand, one, how pressure kicks in, how it affects us, and how it now sometimes starts to govern who we are. So if we're conscious of it, there's choices that we can make to move from a place of survival to what I would say is a place of prosperity and of thriving.
Well, and it's interesting when you talk about that biography piece, who we tell ourselves we are. That applies so much to people's health, or their choices that they make. I need to eat breakfast. I couldn't possibly fast. I don't need to take supplements, or I need to eat these particular foods, or sugar makes me happy, or I need my caffeine. We have all of these stories that we've assigned to ourselves. Some of them may be biological, but a lot of them are biographical. And as we move into this time of year, as people are thinking about 2019 and what are we going to do different this year, and what kind of New Year resolutions do we want to make, having the freedom and the permission to kind of rewrite some of those stories is very powerful. One of the ideas, that idea of intention and purposeful and examining that and looking at it, I know you do that a lot with organizations as well as individuals. So if someone's creating a goal, whether it's personal or professional or wherever, they start out there, here it is, January 2019, we've got this whole blank slate of a year in front of us, and we don't get there. Or maybe we don't even get started. It just stays as this idea thing. We maybe default into some past habit or some self-sabotaging thoughts. So how could we help people keep that intention and stay on purpose to things that really matter?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So let me begin by saying, when we have a survival mindset, when this is happening to us, we all have survival instincts, right? And this is the fight or flight stuff that's internal or external. So we have to sort of we really have to overcome everything that our biology is telling us, to do. We might want to leave or flee, for example, the flight response, and we have to be aware, one, that's happening, and two, overcome it. I guess for your listeners, if I could, I would say if you have a piece of paper, think of a clock in front of you, and at 12 o'clock you write the word purpose. At 3 o'clock you write people. At 6 o'clock write the word productivity, and at 9 o'clock you would write the word performance. And so, to your point, Wanda, it does begin by making a declaration. What is, at the purpose level, what is it I want to create, right? I want to, lose X number of pounds, or I want to change my lifestyle in this way. Whatever that is, you have to make that declaration. And there's great power in making that declaration, right? So that's the intent. The next step is the people step is, who are the people of influence in the relationships in my life that are going to help support that, or that I need to connect with in order to achieve that? So, is there spousal or family support I need? Is there a coach in some respect that I need? But I need to build those relationships or engage the relationships that are actually going to help me get to that purpose. Okay, and often we don't, right? Often, there's people pulling us away from it. The third one, and this is really, really important, in productivity, just think activity. And so some of us are really good at being busy, at filling our days with lots of activity, and at the end of the day, wondering, did we achieve anything? And it's because we struggle sometimes with the prioritization. So the activities that we do need to align with the intention or the purpose that we've declared. Right? So, if I've made a commitment to get healthier through exercise, do my activities reflect that? Right? My walk, my going to the gym, whatever that might be. And I have to prioritize my activities on a daily basis so that they're not distracting and keeping me from my purpose, but that they're on purpose. And then the fourth one is performance, which is really a place of reflection and analysis, is to say, how am I doing? Maybe I'm realizing that, a 10-minute walk each morning isn't really doing what I wanted it to do to get me to my purpose, so I'm going to increase that to 15 or 20 or whatever it might be. But that's just a place of analysis and reflection to say, hey, how's it going? And what do I need to adjust in order to really get the purpose that I've declared? And then I just keep going around that map in a clockwise sort of motion to examine, reflect, and achieve my declaration.
Well, and I think that's a great wheel, because one thing that sometimes happens when I'm working with people and coaching them in a healthcare model is they state the purpose. They want to be better here. They have tapped into the resources. They're reading. They're listening to experts. They're coming to see whatever specialists they need. They're tapped into the people. And then we get to the productivity place and they don't take any action. Mm-hmm. And when we reflect on, why did they not take action? We realize that declaration or that intention wasn't actually theirs. It came from outside somewhere. Their spouse wanted them to do that, or they saw something on Dr. Oz and it said, you should be like this, or, some societal influence. So what do we do when we set a purpose and then we realize that, maybe we weren't being authentic?
Yeah. So, I guess when that happens, and honestly, I haven't thought about it in this way, and I appreciate sort of your insight on this, because I think that very much can happen. So it isn't my purpose now. It's not my declaration. I'm kind of doing it for those reasons that you named. I think that's the place of sort of deeper reflection, to really think, what is it I want to create in the world? Or what is it I want to create for my health? And maybe resist going to, I need to, walk, go to the gym, eat supplements and do this, and this. That's the doing list. And we're really good at creating that list right away. And we don't take the time to step back and say, but what's the result I want? right? What is it I really want to create for myself? If we ask that question first and get really clear about that, the activities or the things that we need to do to get there, they become super clear. But I think what happens often, we just jump right into the list, right? The doings. And then they lose sort of the power or the essential meaning of why we're doing them to begin with.
Absolutely. I think the why is something that often people don't take enough time to think about. I want to lose 20 pounds. Well, why do I want to lose 20 pounds?
Mm-hmm.
I want to live to be 90. Why do I want to live to be 90? And dig and dig and dig through that till you come to the core of whatever it is that truly motivates you.
Right. That's right. Like, so to say something like, I want to live to be 90, what's underneath that? It's, through sort of exploration, it might be, I really want to live a life where I get to experience relationships not only with my children, but my grandchildren in really authentic, long-lasting ways. That's what I want to create. And so one of the things I might do to get there is, I got to look after my health. I got to, there's some changes I need to make to get there. But we jump right in with, I'm going to, I want to live to 90 and I'm going to, I need to drink water. I need to do this, this, and this 4 times a day. And we're right at the content. And we have to get above that. And there's a sweet spot, Wanda, between a mission statement, kind of, be the healthiest individual I can be, which, isn't clear enough for me, to a real declaration of what is it I'm trying to create in my life, in my relationships, and in the world from that authentic place. And then say, okay, now what are the things, some of the key things I need to do to get there?
Yeah, because there is a doing part. I mean, we can think about it all day long, but we do have to take those action steps as well. I'm not minimizing the action step, just trying to find ways that people can fuel that action so that it actually gets that performance and outcome and result that is truly what they're looking for in the end. They're not looking for the activity. They're looking for the results they get from that activity.
That's right. But I think a lot of times people focus on the activities and then it's just a list, right? But if you know what you're really after, then the activities are almost secondary. So I do those. The other thing, and this is, something that's worked for me, and it's going to sound very simple, is it's a lot easier to make 100% commitment than 99. And so if what happens, let's say I say I'm going to cut out, I'm going to drink less. I don't know. If I just say, I'm 100% committed to that, it just means I always say no. But what we tend to do is we go, yeah, but maybe on the weekend, or if I'm out for dinner, and we start to sort of add these little bits in to justify it, and pretty soon we're off purpose. So, I think 100% commitment to the declaration just means we don't have all that mind chatter. We don't have all those justifications, the back and forth going through our mind. It's, no, I'm committed to this 100%, and now I don't have to think about it anymore. It actually creates 100% commitment actually creates freedom.
It's interesting you'd say that. I was talking to a client this week, and she has lost, 20 some pounds. And so I asked her, what do you think was the difference this time? Why did this work? And she said, I decided I wasn't going to have these particular foods, these particular carbs in this case. And it wasn't that I was only going to have them on Friday or a cheat day or whatever. She said, I just don't have them anymore. They're just not part of my selection menu. And she said, and it's easy because they're just not on the list. So it's not like I have to say no to them or deny them or think about them in any way. They're just not there. And I can see where that is a lot less stressful.
Yeah, and we, I think as human beings, right, we resist a little bit this idea of being told that we can't do certain things, or this element of control. But actually, the most freeing thing can be to have that 100% commitment, because like your client says, I don't even think about it, right? It's just not on the list, so it's not up for debate.
Right.
And I think owning, again, when that declaration comes from a place of who I want to be, it's an understanding of embracing who I really desire to be, or how I want to engage the world and others. That brings with it another level of sort of engagement and accountability for myself as well.
So one thing I'm kind of hearing in the background is that people are saying, but, that we talked about the pressure, that fight or flight, the survival mindset. We get into that because of stress in one form or another. Often, we perceive that there's a lion running after us and we are running away. And then sooner or later we see lions everywhere, even when there's no lions there.
Yeah.
So I can hear those people who are listening saying, but I can't control some of that. My work is really stressful. My life as a parent is really busy and I'm on the go with my kids all the time. And those are things that I'm not willing to relinquish or I can't in my own story do that. So that fight or flight, that pressure, is there any ways that you've identified that maybe can help people break that cycle a little bit, or at least how they think about things?
Yeah. So the first is you have to notice it. And honestly, a lot of times we don't. It's to notice that I have that instinct. It's to notice how I'm triggered. And actually we have physical responses to pressure, right? Some of us get hot under the collar, or we turn red, or we get sweaty, or we have mind chat, or whatever. It's first pay attention to those signs and know that's what's happening. That's the first thing. And then to say, look, I have a choice in terms of how I pivot or don't from that pressure. It's sort of like I can let it take me down that road that I know is not a good place, or I can make a choice about it. It doesn't mean there isn't pressure at work. It doesn't mean there isn't pressure in our families and relationships. But we do have a choice about how we respond and how we see others in the midst of that. So one of the ways I think about that is, I don't know if you've seen if you watch like a National Geographic movie or something and you see the lizard pop his head out and, his tongue's flicking in the air and he's kind of looking to see if he's under attack or not, right? Is there friend or foe? And we kind of go through our days when we're under pressure like that. We start to look at others in terms of whether they are kind of aligned with us or they're against us. And so we shift them from being sort of just human beings on this journey with us to a problem in my life, or that they're going to help me or be useful. And I start to see people in terms of that. I remember, one of my children one time coming home very upset at school, and she was sort of just kind of, yelling and upset and was not happy with the family and that sort of thing. And I remember that triggering me and thinking, wow, this kid, you can't talk to me like that, right? And she triggered me, and I got upset with her, right? How dare you talk to me like that? Blah, blah, blah. And, and stepping back, I realized that I was really seeing her just as a problem, right? In terms of my own identity as a parent. And then you step back from that situation, you see this is a kid that actually is in pain. And sometimes we miss that, right? We miss the humanness of people when we're only seeing them in terms of how they're impacting us. So is she just a problem to me, a kid that's being disrespectful, a kid that's yelling when they shouldn't yell? Or is this a kid that's actually in pain and I need to try to help? And when I'm triggered in that pressure place, I often don't make things better. I make things worse.
That's such a good point. And that, just having that perspective or the ability to pivot into that perspective can just instantly reduce the stress.
Yeah,
because you're not perceiving an attack,
That's right. Like one of it's, what do I know about this person? What's their day been like? What might be going on? Instead of seeing a child as sort of being a disrespectful sort of offspring or whatever, I now see it as a kid in pain. Were they bullied at school? Did something happen? Did they get a bad mark? Are kids excluded? Like, there's all kinds of things that'll occur to me when I'm in that place of openness and seeing them as in the fullness of their humanity, as opposed to only in terms of how they're impacting me and whether they serve me in a way that justifies, in lots of cases, my own bad behavior.
And of course that applies to, spouses and coworkers and bosses and the person waiting on you in the restaurant and, the guy behind you in line at the grocery store. I mean, that perception of humanity is something that I think is increasingly lost. So I've really enjoyed having the chance to talk about that a little bit more today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the podcast. I mean, it's just a question of the people in front of me. Do I see them as people in the fullness of their humanity with all their faults and foibles there, or do I see them as a problem and that they're somehow either not serving me or challenging me in a way that I do or don't don't like, and when we can shift our perspective, I think we will see the beauty of who people are with all their uniqueness and humanity that they bring.
Well, I think that's really an awesome place to leave our conversation. We're pretty much running out of time. Is there anything that you want to leave people with other than that?
I think what I would want to leave people with is, if we're thinking in terms of declarations and being on purpose, it's not this big cosmic endeavor that sometimes we make it out to be. What we're meant to be doing is sort of what we've always been doing and who we are, and embrace the uniqueness of that. Each of us are sort of created uniquely that way. But I think too, it's to create the intention, and then ask yourself, am I doing the things on a daily basis to help me get to where it is I really want to be? Because often we find, a month, 3 months, 5 years, 10 years later, we're not. And it's because we get off purpose. And there's a great freedom in those declarations and staying on purpose. And while we do it, let's see each other as people all on this journey together. That's what I'd want to leave you with, I think.
Thanks very much, Jeff. And thanks everyone else for joining us this week on Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. As always, we hope you enjoyed listening to this as much as I've certainly enjoyed taking the time to chat with Jeff today. And we will have all of his information in the show notes, as always, or website, any information that you can use to follow up on this for more yourself. And of course, thank you for listening. But if you've liked what you hear, please share it with someone you know if you think they could also benefit from the information. As always, we are free on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, probably a million other platforms because they get picked up all the time. And of course, our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com. And while you're at the website, if you haven't, please register for our weekly newsletter. We share lots of extra recordings and fun findings, things we've found during the week that relate to health and wellness, as well as our book of the month, special events, and special product offers that we have from ourselves and from our partners. So thank you. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing in our Beyond Your Wildest Genes passion for a healthier world. And thank you guys all for listening. We hope you enjoyed it and join us for more next week. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.